What is up, everyone? Brandon First, aka First Report, representing the First Off the Bench podcast network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are first. Welcome in to another edition of the In the Paint podcast. We break down everything college basketball has to offer. And folks, it is our first March episode of the season. You know what that means. It's about to get serious as we get closer to conference tournaments. Some getting rolling this weekend. Most next weekend into Selection Sunday in just about 10 days. But with me, as always, to help break it down is my friend and co-host, Raider Jim Martinez. You can find Mr. Martinez at Raider Jim 1090. How you doing tonight, sir?
Oh, like I told you, I've been working in my garage. I got the floor cleared out. I got plenty of room to dance, and I can't wait.
There you go. I tell you, seeing Raider Jim dance. That's a sight to behold. And now in the comforts of his own garage, one more push, you said, and it's all clear. And I'm sure there are plenty of people out there that are kind of maybe sighing heavily, realizing, oh, you know what, my garage might need a nice little clean out. But one positive of living in an apartment, no garage needed. But yeah, you still got a room to keep clean, things like that. But as I said, March is upon us and it's about to get real if it hasn't already. And the bubbles for a lot of these teams, they're about to be burst in the next few weeks. Of course, we will get to our normal stuff, but we are going to start at the top with kind of an early preview of what we're going to see in March, or at least on Selection Sunday, and looking at the top. We do talk plenty about bubble teams and things like that. We're going to be talking about the teams that not only are firmly in, but are kind of fighting for that number one seed and really realistically that last number one seed. Because currently, and in no real particular order, Houston, Purdue, and UConn, barring something catastrophic, even that, those three teams are going to get the three of the 4 1 seeds. However, after UConn, Purdue, Houston, there is a massive log jam going. I mean, you can even go number 11 Creighton at 22-8, possibly making, if they get hot. But there are 5, 6, 7 teams that all have a case for that last number one seed. Raider Jim was wondering what your thoughts are on, who is going to bring in that last number one.
Yeah, if we look at it through yesterday, Tennessee currently at number 4. For all intents and purposes, if that's how it stopped, they would get that number one seed in my book. They do have 7 quad one wins, 5 quad one losses. They win the SEC tournament, though. I think that would be the decision maker. Now, the sleeper is going to be in the Pac-12 tournament because if Washington State does their magic and takes care of Arizona, even though Arizona has a great quad one record, 7 wins and 3 losses, if they can't take care of business in that Pac-12 tournament, I do not think that they're going to get a number one seed. I think they'll end up being a number 2 seed. Also, Iowa State. Iowa State still playing strong, still clawing their way up. Now it's North Carolina. And of course, we weren't saying this earlier in the year, but sitting at number 9 right now, you got the Duke Blue Devils. And if they win their conference tournament, might they do? Because there's so many variables in front of Duke. Marquette is doing themselves no favor. I don't think they're a threat to be a number one. So definitely right now, I would tell you it's going to be Tennessee. And don't be surprised if Duke doesn't end up being a sleeper if they win the tournament, if they win out in the conference, and of course, if a couple of the teams up in front of them just drop.
Yeah, big matchup ending the season, regular season for Duke this weekend. They'll face their friends, not so much, but the North Carolina Tar Heels, and kind of maybe an elimination game. And I don't know if North Carolina has, full aspirations for that one seed, but obviously whoever loses that game is going to give up on those number one seeds. I look at it, and this might be maybe too simplistic, but I kind of look at it just who wins the SEC. If it's Auburn, if it's Alabama, if it's Tennessee,
Right.
okay, those 3 teams, whichever one of those 3 get it, you're in. And then if Arizona goes and handles their business in the Pac-12, and for instance, I don't know why I'm blanking. A Mississippi State, who's definitely a threat, not one of those three SEC teams goes and wins it, even a Kentucky, then I think Arizona has that shot because you talked about the quad one wins, 7-3 for Arizona, and they might have had when the season kind of ends and all the dust has settled. I think they may have the best win, narrowly beating out the Gonzaga Kentucky win, but for Arizona to go to Cameron and win. It's one thing to beat Duke in Maui or Las Vegas in a neutral site, one of those tournaments early in the season, but to go to Cameron as not only a Power 5 school, but as Arizona, who has national title aspirations, and they looked really good. I don't like to cite November basketball in March just because you talk to any of these coaches, November was decades ago in their book, but that's kind of how we
Right.
have to split these hairs when we're trying to find the last number one seed. And it's going to be really interesting, but I do think the SEC champion, those, top three, if those three, one of those three wins the SEC tournament, I think they have first crack at it. And I think that's, the best way to go about it. With all due respect to Arizona, the Pac-12 is just not on the level. I mean, the Mountain West is a better conference than the Pac-12 this year. It's just facts. So that I think will hurt Arizona if it does come down to them versus an SEC champ being one of those three teams. But it's
I
going to
would
be very
agree.
interesting to see how that does shake up. And really, at the end of the day, I mean, even looking back at last year, a number one seed only guarantees you one game against a 16. It's the only thing it guarantees you, and a game close to home. But other than that, you're still going to have to go out and play for 40 minutes 6 times and get 6 wins, just like everybody else. And eventually, you're going to run into some teams that are definitely on your level. But it's going to be definitely something to keep an eye on as we inch closer to Selection Sunday. I meant to bring this up before, but we are recording here on the 6th of March. It's a Wednesday. So as I said, about 10 days away from Selection Sunday, getting everything sorted, getting you ready to fill out your brackets. And of course, we'll be here to help you with that. But moving on to our next subject, a little bit of a follow-up. We did have a discussion about court storming last week. Obviously, the situation with Kyle Filipowski, who, unfortunately, it looks like a pretty bad incident. And since we spoke, Kyle Filipowski has, played in 2 games, thank goodness. But definitely raised some eyebrows this past weekend going with a windmill dunk. And there are a lot of people that maybe are, wondering if that vindicates, I don't know if vindicates the right word, but maybe if that softens some people's stances. So I was just wondering, just to follow up on that, your thoughts on that, Raider Jim.
Yeah, when you go down with an injury like that, be it, you step off the curb and you twist your ankle, your foot folds under you, you hyperextend your knee. It's just the natural reaction of a body to freeze. That injured part is going to freeze, and that's going to send signals up to your brain. And the first thing your brain says is, okay, we got to take it easy. We got to take it easy. Uh-oh, how bad is this? And you just by nature of science, you're going to you're going to treat that injury or that part that just got injured with kid gloves. You're going to take it a little easy. The initial reaction is, gosh, I don't know how bad it is. So for what we saw after the court storming and all the questions of, oh my gosh, is it his ankle? Is it his knee? How bad is it? And then for him to come out and play as he did, all that really tells you is the mental part of it came in and the physical part was not as bad. Now, that being said, I still think that there needs to be a good review and overlook and assessment on, hey, this court storming, okay, somebody's going to get hurt really bad at some point in time. Yeah, even if, I don't care if it's the women's teams, the guys teams, I don't care if it's D1, D2, somebody's going to get hurt. And not only that, what if it's a student that gets hurt?
Yeah.
Now, if it's a student that gets hurt, then we're going to have all the litigation and everything else going on, and universities are going to be held responsible. And next thing you know, you got a Dateline thing coming up with Keith Morrison. So I think they still have to do some kind of due diligence and find a way for schools to become more responsible for holding back the kids. I think you said it last week, and I know I was thinking it. Hey, you want to charge the court? You let the visitors off first, and you let any of your home team players get out that want to get out. Any of the guys that stick around and want to high five you and you know give hugs and slap and everything else, great. But let those visiting coaches and players get out.
Yeah, I agree with I don't think this changes anything. First and foremost, it's I don't whatever your thoughts are on Duke or court storming or anything, you have to be happy that this wasn't worse and Kyle Fapowski is
Correct.
going to play basketball. We didn't That's the one thing I don't think anybody wanted to happen. And I don't think it should change anyone's opinion on it. Because like you said, excuse me, in that moment, you don't know how bad it is or anything like that. That's why a lot of times, even in the NFL, when they're like 99% sure some guy for his ACL, guess what? What are they going to say? We're going to wait for the MRI. Because no one wants to get out ahead of it and
Yep.
say, oh, this happened or didn't happen, and then they were wrong. And so once again, for him to get back on the court, that's great. But I think it undercuts a bigger issue that I think, as you kind of alluded to, is I'm not terribly worried. I mean, obviously I am. I want everybody to be safe, but my biggest worry is for the fans. In these court storming situations, where it does turn into a bit of a stampede situation. And thank goodness that we have not, and I'm knocking on wood as I say this, but we haven't seen anything major in these situations. And obviously not all court stormings are the same. Some are very, I don't want to say civil, but they're calmer than others. And the Wake Forest one was very, on the more intense side. But once again, I do kind of go back to the fact that 99.9% of the time we get through this, no story, which is fantastic. And let's keep that going. But, it only takes one. And I just want to find that happy medium. My dad always used to say, if you have a problem, but you don't have a solution, don't bring it up because then you're just whining. And I don't have a solution. I don't know where I want
Right.
there to be a
Right.
happy medium. I know I want that. I just don't know what it is. So all I can do is
And,
just hope that everyone's is safe.
and we're not that's the hard part is there's too many variables out there. We're talking how many teams, how many different arenas, every university is going to have a different approach. So
It's
yeah, unfortunately there is no, I don't think there is one answer that you can apply to, you know, all the conferences, all the teams, all the arenas.
yeah. I think because I was thinking about it more, throughout the week, about my idea of, and it wasn't my idea, I shouldn't say that, but an idea that had been out there, of holding them back, kind of before. And I think in certain situations, a buzzer beater, there's nothing you can do. The players are strewn about the court, maybe someone's on the ground, and then the reaction of the fans of, oh my gosh, this just happened, boom. But in some situations when, not a whole lot of times like this, but when they're up 6 with 2 seconds to go. Okay, do we really need to inbound the ball right now? Maybe the refs just huddle real quick, give a signal to the coach. Everyone goes like this and they walk off. They drop the ball on court and it goes, the buzzer goes and everyone runs off who wants to be on there. Once again, I don't know if there's a perfect solution, but I think there is a solution out there, that hopefully will take into account everyone's safety, going forward because, yeah, I feel like
And
we're
the one
not
thing
playing with
you
fire,
or
but
I
we're
have
staying
not,
away from it. Mm-hmm.
something that you and I have not said is it can be a hometown player that gets hurt.
Yeah.
And then wait and see what kind of attention it gets.
Well, and I'm just thinking back to the Houston Baylor game. And this didn't happen or anything, but LJ Cryer is with Houston now. He was with Baylor. I just wonder
Yeah.
if I don't know if maybe, and I'm not saying this happened because I haven't followed it, but maybe he said some things like maybe there are certain situations where a guy is targeted. Because a lot of times, I don't want to say these players are anonymous, but they're all wearing the same uniform. It's pretty easy. They're all probably taller than most of us. But in some situations, like you said, the hometown kid who grew up in Columbus, but all of a sudden he decided I'm going to Michigan State. There are a lot of people in Ohio that think that that's sacrilege and it should be illegal. I mean, seriously. And they get on the court within arm's length of that, we could see something happen. Thank goodness we
Right.
haven't. But yeah, it's a good point to bring up. And like I said, it's a situation where I feel like it might be a reactionary decision instead of getting it out in
Instead of
front.
a proactive decision.
Proactive.
Right.
Thank you. That's what I was looking for. I appreciate that. I was struggling there, but yeah, it's a reactive decision when it should be a proactive decision. But that's life sometimes, and we'll see how it goes going forward. But switching topics, we are going to continue to highlight some of the quote unquote mid to low majors in college basketball as we get closer to March. Obviously, we're going to see some of these teams as higher seeds, and some of these are going to possibly bust your bracket, but we're going to do our best to hopefully warn you about them before. Quick follow-up, we talked about the Ivy League, and we did see Princeton take down Cornell in a very good game. I believe it was 59-57. It was a 2-point game. I know that for sure. So it does look like Princeton is going to have the inside track going there, but just wanted to follow up on that. This week, we are going to be kind of switching our focus back to a mid-major, going from a low major in the Ivy League to a mid-major in the American Athletic Conference. This is a conference that's right up there with the Mountain West, kind of on the top of the mid-major scale, even with kind of the pillaging that the Big 12 and some of these other schools, the AC or the other conferences have done with this whole realignment. The AAC, obviously, where Houston was, and some of the other schools that have moved on to the Big 12. On the AAC, obviously, all eyes preseason were going to be on Florida Atlantic, and they've had an all right season. They do look like a tournament team, a net of 37. However, they're 12-4, second in the AAC to South Florida, who, when I pulled up the AAC and I looked at the standings, I had to scratch my head and wonder how this team isn't on my radar. They are 16-1 in the AAC, 23-5 overall, and they are currently on a 15-game winning streak. Now, their net, which once again is that RPI, or at least the way that people are judging, their net is 75. So that jumps out to me. Not a very good non-conference schedule. And the AAC doesn't hold a whole lot of value. Memphis is also here. Charlotte's having a good season. Charlotte 11-5, Memphis 11-6, and then followed by SMU, UAB, North Texas, to kind of round out the top teams. Raider Jim, what are your thoughts? The American Athletic Conference.
Yeah, for all intents and purposes, you pretty much, it's like we sat down and wrote this together almost. At 16-1, 23-5 overall, South Florida currently ranked, I think, number 24.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty darn good. And congratulations to them. Like you said, Florida Atlantic is the one that's making you go, what happened? But at the same time, you also mentioned net rankings. If you look at yesterday's net rankings, believe it or not, Florida Atlantic is ranked 37th.
Mm-hmm.
SMU is ranked 50th. Memphis is ranked 72nd. South Florida is all the way down at 75. So they know something we don't know, and maybe it's the quad one wins. I don't know. I should have taken a closer look at that. But in this particular conference and this conference tournament, watch Memphis. Watch Memphis and SMU. I can see that being the final game because they're good programs. SMU is taking care of business when they've needed to do it. Memphis is always dangerous because they're just fast and they play well. So we'll see what happens, but I don't think South Florida is going to come out as guys that win this conference. And I don't think that AAC, they might get 2 teams in, but if they get 2 teams in, it's going to be, a 14 seed, a 15 seed, things like that. But they're going to be hard pressed to get 2, I think.
Yeah, and as you kind of alluded to, South Florida, if they don't win their conference tournament, they're not like the net of 75 for that is not even on the bubble. You want to be in the 40s and 50s to be considered on the bubble, and that's even for Power 5 schools. And this isn't a situation. I'm just looking over South Florida's schedule. They've had some really bad losses the beginning of the year. And once again, this is November basketball, but lost by 5 to Central Michigan at home. They lost by 11 to Maine at home. They lost by 19 to Hofstra on the road. And I'm just going through trying to find a good win. They did beat Florida State, but that's mainly just saying, hey, we beat an ACC school. Florida State isn't having a great year. And they also beat Loyola Chicago, but once again, that's more of a name than what we've actually seen out of Loyola Chicago. So it's going to be interesting. They did beat Memphis in Memphis, but once again, is that considered? It's definitely not a quad one win, but how big of a win is that for them? But look, all you can do is win the games in front of you, and if they win out, including the conference tournament, they will get in. I'd be very interested to see where they're seated, because what this tells me with the net, and I don't know how much this is taken into account seating wise, but that tells me that, they're a solid 10, 11 as a conference champion coming in, possibly riding a 18, 19 game winning streak. That's a tough ask for a 7 seed or a 6 seed to go, hold on. We had a pretty good season here ourselves. I could just imagine San Diego State coming out going, whew, all right, we got that 6. Here's South Florida.
Right.
And it's like, whoa, what did we do? Oh, and you're going to be in Tampa. Like, what's going on? But anyways, so just keep an eye on what they do. But once again, they are on a very rocky cliff. They've already won the regular season AAC title. They've clinched that a long time ago, but no one cares about regular season titles for all intents and purposes. Right. It's all about the conference. So it's going to be an interesting tournament.
Just to note, they're only the lone quad one win they have is their win against Memphis. It was the only quad win game they had, and they won it. After that, they have a respectable quad 2 record. They've lost 3 of them, but they've won 5, it looks like. But then, like you said, after that, there's not a lot of real strong, nothing makes you point and go, wow, look at that. I mean, the Loyola Chicago, that's a quad 3 game.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's more of a name. That's like when you beat George Mason like 3 years after they went to the Final Four. Like, that was cool,
Georgetown. We beat Georgetown.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's it's going to be a tough ask. But at the same time, like I said, I think these coaches have to lean into the fact that, look, we control our own destiny. And I think they have 1 game left. Do I still have it up? Yeah. They're going to be on the road at Tulsa. No real betting feel for this other than I might look at Tulsa in the money line. If I'm the coach of South Florida, I'm not going to ask my team to lose, but I don't want my team riding a 16-game winning streak going into the conference tournament, knowing they need to win out to make the tournament. I don't know. That's just me, and maybe there are plenty of people rolling their eyes. But for me, the game doesn't mean anything against Tulsa. I mean, obviously, it still wouldn't be considered a very good loss, but once again, I think winning your conference tournament has to be. I don't think they can worry about the bubble, judging by the net. Once again, I don't know how much that's taken into account, but I know the RPI was pretty good back in the day. So we shall see in terms of the AAC. But time to switch gears to our kind of local side of things, or what we focus on. We're going to start with Raider Jim, as we are a few days away from the WCC tournament rolling, but I know he wants to talk about that fantastic win Gonzaga had up in Moraga, or down in Moraga for their sake. But Raider Jim, your thoughts on Gonzaga and the WCC?
Yeah, here we go. It's time, conference time. I think the first games are going to get underway tomorrow and then Friday, and then the semifinals will start on, I believe they are going to hit on Sunday or Monday. You had it down on our schedule here.
I believe it's Monday.
Monday is the semis, and they've already advanced to the semis. They're the 2 seed. Gonzaga Bulldogs, everything that I said about the Bulldogs last week seems to be coming true, and that is they are hitting their stride. They've got their chemistry finally. you don't need the chemistry in as much in March and December as you do need it in February and conference play and now. And I think they're starting to click on all cylinders. I said it last week that I thought that they would have a good showing at St. Mary's on the St. Mary's court. And I even went as far as to say, I will tell you, I'll put my money that they're going to win by at minimum 8 points. And they've won by 13. If I'm St. Mary's, that's got to be a mental thing in their head. You can say, oh, but we beat them. We beat them on their home court. You beat them by 2 points on what some people still call the questionable call. And then when they played Santa Clara, what did they do? They lost to Santa Clara by a single point, went out and beat them by double digits. San Francisco was the hurdle between Saturday to wrap up the West Coast Conference in San Francisco. And everybody said, don't sleep on USF. And there was really no challenge. Competitive, but no challenge. What's the difference? The difference is the change to the lineup, to playing Van Greg a little bit more. Graham Ike, this guy is a man among men. He's another one. Anton Watson. What really stands out to me from Saturday's win against St. Mary's. One, Anton Watson, nothing but major respect for him. He was first conference honors once again in the WCC. He only scored 2 points. Not a big deal. He's fine with that because I'll tell you what, his guys stepped up. And the two guys that really took care of business, Graham Ike, had his 24 points and he was slamming stuff down. He got a double-double. I forget how many that was for the season. But not Andrew, Ryan Nemhart. That kid played out of his mind. 20 points, double digits in assists, but more importantly, he played the entire game. He played 40 minutes, and that is to say something. And I wish there would have been a mic somewhere because apparently the St. Mary's student section was pretty verbal. And you could just see it towards the end of the second half, middle of the second half. Every time he went past, he had something to say. He had a look to give. And as it was winding down, he had no problem. I mean, basically saying, there's that old term, poke the bear. Oh, you shouldn't have poked the bear. And, so he very much showed his Gonzaga pride that night. But what a game that was. What a finish to the season. Coach, congratulations to Randy Bennett, who got West Coast Conference Coach of the Year. And I believe that was his 6th time, along with Anton Watson, Graham Ike, and Ryan Nemhart. They were the 3 Gonzaga Bulldogs that made first team West Coast Conference. So congratulations to them. It's going to be a great tournament. They're not going to look past their semifinal game, but I think they'll take care of business. And I'll go on record again. I think you can just go ahead and get ready to call the Gonzaga Bulldogs the 2024 West Coast Conference champions.
I miss the days, and I think it used to kind of rotate, but they really, really like San Diego. Back when the WCC tournament was held on different campuses, and it was here at USD. And
when Jenny Craig got built, that was it.
And I tell you, I know, it's highly, highly doubtful USD is going to make any noise in this tournament, at least late. But you get a ticket to that Gonzaga St. Mary's game. I don't care. Obviously I'm a little partial because of Raider Jim with Gonzaga, but that's one of those you just show up, sit down and watch. It's pretty cool. Unfortunately, that's moved out to Vegas for obvious reasons, but it's going to be a great tournament. And as you said, you can't really look past whoever those 2 teams are that are going to stand up to St. Mary's, because whoever those 2 teams are, that's kind of their season on the line. None of those kids want to end right then and there. At the very least, they'd love to be able to say, maybe we didn't win the WCC, but we're able to take down St. Mary's, or we're able to take down Gonzaga. Gonzaga's always getting the best shot out of the WCC teams. And I think St. Mary's is getting to that level as well. So it'd be very interesting to see how it all shakes out. As you said, very, very intriguing out in Vegas. My side of things, Mountain West and San Diego State. I'm going to start with the Aztecs first. Folks, I'm kind of running out of things to say about this team. They are Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, to a T, and it's not about whether or not he drank the potion or not. It's about whether where they slept the night before, apparently, because these kids refuse to play on the road. They are now 5-8 after their 4-point loss to UNLV, who is playing very well. I'm not going to poo-poo on UNLV, but San Diego State is a better team. They went out. They lose by 4 in a game where they shoot 28% compared to UNLV, who shoots 40. They get probably the worst game of the season out of Jaden Ledee. 2 for 12 from the field. I think he had 12 points, but most of that was from the free throw line. Just overall, you could chalk it up to the ball wasn't bouncing our way. But I think we're so late in the season. Second to last game. It's your final road game. You're 5-8 on the road, yet you're undefeated at home. There has to be some middle ground there. And the other part of this too, guess where you're going to play the conference tournament? The most important conference tournament probably in quite some time for the Aztecs as a program because of how good the Mountain West is. There's a really good chance that if San Diego State bows out in the quarterfinals, which is a possibility, which we'll get to in a moment, they could be looking at 8 or a 9 seed. And just a few weeks ago, I was saying there's a chance this Aztecs team gets a 4 seed. Now, in that scenario, they handled their business. Unfortunately, they haven't. They will finish up the season this Friday. They'll host Boise. Just going by the percentages, you'd have to imagine the Aztecs win that one, finish the season undefeated at home. In terms of the tiebreak and all that stuff, we're just gonna have to wait and see because it's a perfect segue into the Mountain West, which is an absolute log jam for all the right reasons. Utah State's at the top. They control their own destiny. They are 12-4. Then we drop down to Nevada and Boise State, both at 12-5. Excuse me, Nevada, Boise State, and UNLV, all at 12-5. And then San Diego State firmly in the 5 seed, 11-6, dropping down to New Mexico at 9-7. Colorado State, Wyoming, Fresno, Air Force, and San Jose State. Once you get away from Colorado State, it's pretty much 1 through 8 from this conference you have a real shot of seeing in the tournament. UNLV, unfortunately, had a terrible non-conference. They are kind of like Gonzaga without the glitz and glamour. They've figured out how to play basketball without those expectations. So their net is at 77. So they're going to need to win the conference tournament, but they're playing very well. So that's not out of the realm possibility. But you have 6 teams in the Mountain West that are inside the top 38 in the net, which is a very nice place to be. Now, once again, I don't think all 6 of those are getting in, but I think a bare minimum of 4 Mountain West teams are getting in. I think, I'm knocking on wood again as I say this, but I think San Diego State is firmly in. At this point, it's just a matter of whether or not it'll be a single or double digit. But you look at wins in Gonzaga, and they've had some good wins that they're escaping me. Washington was another good one. And they did actually handle their business against St. Mary's as well. And that Grand Canyon loss might not go down as, as bad of a loss as we thought. However, for the Aztecs, the difference between a 6 and a 9 is a big, big difference because then you're looking at a 3 on the other side or you're looking at a 1 on the other side. So very, very important game against Boise on Friday for the Aztecs. And then, of course, going in to the tournament. The Mountain West tournament will begin probably, I think it's a week from today. I believe it starts the 13th. And then we see the final will be, they usually do it Saturday night, or Saturday, I should say, Saturday. But we shall see. It's going to be very interesting. The only thing that I think the conference tournament will miss is the late stages urgency. Because I'm pretty sure, unless it's UNLV, if you have a San Diego State, Boise State, Utah State, and Nevada Final Four, all of those teams are firmly in the tournament. So we're not going to see that fight. We have to win this game in order to get into the tournament. I think that's the only thing we're going to be missing. But overall, This is going to be, for my money, outside of the Big 12 and SEC, this is the tournament that I'm going to keep my eye on the most. I mean, you can make a case that the Mountain West is the third or fourth best conference in the country. I mean, just look at the numbers. You might not like the population of schools or this or that, and it might be blasphemous to say that the Mountain West is better than the ACC, and it might not be, but you can make a case for it this year at the very least. Very, very excited to see how it all shakes out. Especially considering, and I don't want to dance on anyone's grave, but this is the time for the Mountain West to step forward, because they are now the only West Coast conference. Excuse me, mid-major West Coast conference. I caught myself there. Obviously, we do have the WCC as well. But also football side of things, the Mountain West is the premier Pacific Conference now. So we shall see how that all shakes out in Vegas. Personally, cannot wait. I would love to have been able to sneak out there, but bills got to be paid. So moving on to our final segment, as always, it's
If I may, if I may, I wanted to put a question to you about San Diego State. So, great breakdown as always when you talk about Mountain West and San Diego State. Here's my question to you. They are 3-7 in quad one games, which is not a, that's not good for the resume. More importantly, final game wraps up and it is at home and they're undefeated at home, but it's against Boise. Boise is one of those quad one losses on their record. If by some chance Boise comes in and takes care of business here at on the Aztec home court, how does that impact everything in your eyes?
Maybe I'm just too in love with the numbers. Because like when I see San Diego State with a net of 19 and only 2 losses on the board, I mean, conceivably, and that's even if they lose to Boise. They might not even have any more losses left. But at worst, there are 2 more losses waiting. I think they're still in the tournament, but it now becomes a situation where maybe, I don't even know if they drop all the way down to a play-in spot, but I think that's their floor, in my opinion, would be the first 4. I just, and the record in the quad one isn't great, but I also think it last year, whether they want to admit it or not, is going to affect the selection committee, because San Diego State isn't some no-name program. San Diego State was in the national title game last year.
Correct.
Whether you want to poo-poo how they got there, they beat the number 1 overall seed. They did everything they needed to. Almost got I think they pushed UConn closer than anyone did. Also, I look at those are 10 quad one wins for a mid-major. I think sometimes you do have to look at it and go, it's really hard for these teams to schedule quad one teams. Duke doesn't want San Diego State to come in November. Arizona doesn't want San Diego State to come in November. It took a lot of cojones for Gonzaga to say, yeah, come on up here. But Gonzaga also has the same side too, right? They need to supplement the conference side with the non-conference side and play some of those bigger schools. So I think just the fact that San Diego State put themselves out there, I think is going to help. But 3-7 doesn't look good. And I think at the end of the day, they are going, unless something changes and they go and win the Mountain West tournament and win out, I think they are going to be slighted the most of the teams that are firmly in it. It's kind of like one of those, hey, there are 3 teams for this seed. Well, we only have 2 seeds for them, or 2 can fit in here. Let's put those 2 in. San Diego State drops down 1. I think San Diego State's going to kind of plinko if they do lose these 2 games. But I personally, and I could be very wrong, and who knows, maybe in 2 weeks we laugh about this, but I think San Diego State is firmly in the tournament regardless. But overall, just you want to see even the Boise. I really don't care about the Boise game, and I know that sounds crazy. I want to see this team, how this team plays on the road. That's the only thing I care about now. Because I know, but guess what? The tournament isn't going to be played at Viejas. They're going to have to go to Vegas. They're going to have to go to, I don't know, Seattle if they're lucky, or, Kansas City or whatever, blah, blah, blah. I want to see how they do there. I know what this team is like in Viejas, but it just seems like when they go on the road, bad things happen. I don't know what it is. And it's not like, with all due, well, although Vegas is a very easy city to get, in trouble in, but some of these other cities, and it is the travel as well. We do talk about it. Maybe I haven't talked about it enough, but the travel in the Mountain West, not so much UNLV, but Laramie, Wyoming, Boise, Utah, or Boise, Idaho. I think it's Logan, Utah. Not the easiest international airports to land in and smoothly get there in tropical weather. So that could possibly be it too. But shooting 28% from the field and kind of ending your road season 5-8 does not look great to the committee, to anyone. But still things to go. But I think they're in. I think they're in. Could be wrong. Might be wrong, but it's dinner time. But before we get to dinner for the pups, we got the upcoming games. As I said, these are kind of focused mainly on just Friday and Saturday. Sunday is essentially going to be the final regular season game for everyone. Essentially, I don't know that for sure, but pretty much everyone. And then kind of the smaller schools or the smaller conferences actually have their tournaments getting rolling as well. So keep an eye out for those. They're not listed, but make sure you keep an eye on some of those, especially the Ivy League. But we are going to be moving on and checking out Friday's slate. Two good matchups in some, mid-major settings. As we talked about, Boise heading to Viejas to face number 21 San Diego State. On the other side of the country, VCU. They will head to Dayton to face the number 25 Dayton Flyers in a big A10 matchup. Then we'll switch to Saturday. Selfishly, yes, I'm putting them in because they are firmly on the bubble, and this win would get them in. It's number 10 Creighton heading to the aforementioned Villanova Wildcats, who got a big win over Providence this past weekend. Very good second half on the road. Then we have South Carolina at Mississippi State. Mississippi State's another dark horse to keep an eye on going into the SEC tournament. Kansas, seems like every week we talk about Kansas in a big game. They are heading to number 1 Houston. Kentucky, number 15. They are heading to Knoxville to face number 4 Tennessee. Number 11 Baylor faces off against Texas Tech. It would be a huge win for Texas Tech. I don't know if that's enough, but it would get them rolling in the right direction. And a game we mentioned a little bit earlier when we were talking about Mr. Filipowski, it's number 7 UNC at number 9 Duke. That's going to be a heck of a game. Number 2 UConn, giving Providence a chance. This is a chance for Providence to get themselves back onto the bubble after Nova bursted it. The Huskies will face the Friars on Saturday. And then in the Mountain West, a very big matchup for kind of at the top of things. The New Mexico Lobos, they will face number 22 Utah State. And then as we kind of talked about, the WCC semis will be rolling on Monday. Guaranteed to see St. Mary's against someone and Gonzaga against someone, so keep an eye on that. And then the Power 5 conference tournaments will begin in earnest on Tuesday. Just a heads up, everyone makes tournaments in those Power 5, so you're going to see a lot of 10 versus 14 matchups Tuesday and Wednesday. The big powers really get rolling Thursday. So just to bring that up. But Raider Jim, what games do you have your eye on coming up this weekend?
Well, I think Kansas is in a world of hurt, and I don't think it's going to get any better when they go to Houston. I think Houston's going to take care of business. Sometimes people look at it as, well, what do they really have to play for? Like they said, St. Mary's didn't have to worry about anything on Saturday because they already had won the conference. They couldn't lose the conference. No, it means something. I assure you, Houston wants to make the statement by saying, we are the number 1 team. And that's the old Ric Flair thing, right? To be the man, you got to beat the man. Well, if you want to be number 1, you got to beat number 1. Houston's not going to take their foot off the gas at all. I think Kansas is going to have a bad time. Kentucky, again, I still have issues with Kentucky and where they get ranked with the season they've had. At the same time, Tennessee is also too strong. We talked about them early in the podcast, and I think they're going to have a fantastic game. I would love to see Texas Tech put together the game of games, but you know what? Baylor's dangerous right now. Baylor's playing good ball, and I think Baylor's just going to go in, treat it like any other game, take care of business. And it's kind of nice to see the old blue blood traditions come back every now and then. It was kind of a couple off years for the UNC and the Duke rivalry. But at 7-9 right now, this is going to have all that Coach K and Coach Williams stuff to it. So I'm looking forward to that one. And I think Duke is going to end up overcoming in that one. Providence, too little, too late. I don't think that they are going to make too much of a statement against UConn. UConn is just too big, too strong right now. And then Monday night semis, we'll see. Good luck to St. Mary's, good luck to the Zags, and good luck to their opponents. If you can pull off the upset, congratulations. But it should be pretty academic by that time.
Yeah, and to be honest, I think overall what might actually be best for the WCC is a non-Gonzaga St. Mary's conference winner, because then the WCC is guaranteed 3 teams. Obviously, Gonzaga and St. Mary's are going to have something to say about that. But before I get to my upcoming games, I wanted to, circle back to what I talked about last week and my Oklahoma Sooners. I can't believe I'm actually saying it. My Oklahoma Sooners. I don't like Oklahoma, never have, never will, mainly on the football side of things. But I bought in on the Sooners this year, and I believe that, this is a dark horse. This is a team that can make a statement. They have not been good. They have been wildly inconsistent. They've looked really good and then really bad. I likened them to my Midnight Bourbon, which is one of the famous horses that seem to always finish second about 3 or 4 years ago in the top grade ones. And Oklahoma had their Midnight Bourbon moment against Houston this past weekend. Watched that game. Maybe I was a jinx. I had the text typed out, Raider Jim. Oklahoma is back. And Houston, yeah, I didn't send the text, but yeah. So I just wanted to do some housekeeping on that one. I'm officially done, at least for now, on Oklahoma. God forbid somehow Oklahoma gets in the tournament. That's my nightmare at this point. I don't know if I can get away from Oklahoma if they get the tournament, but I think that's pretty much done and dusted. But the top upcoming games, obviously, I'm going to have my eye on the San Diego State Boise matchup, even though I was kind of, tongue in cheek about how maybe it doesn't matter, blah, blah, blah. Definitely going to be keeping an eye on that one. Obviously, my Villanova Wildcats, a win over Creighton, which is very possible. All due respect to Creighton, they're not very good on the road either. And, that place is going to be bumping because that is essentially they're I don't want to say ticket in, but you feel really good after that win, the way Nova has kind of finished out. And I'm excited to see Mississippi State. This is a team that I've seen glimpses of. Obviously, I don't know if they play defense in the SEC, but it's a lot of fun to watch. I'll tell you that right now. I think I texted you about it. It's going to be interesting to see how these SEC teams deal in the tournament. And because I kind of think if you go back and you watch San Diego State, not to bring them into every discussion, but when they beat Alabama last year, Alabama wasn't sure how to deal with a slow, methodical team like that because they never played against them because the SEC is so wide open. But I am going to be interested to see that. And then obviously Kentucky and Tennessee. This is the best I think the SEC has ever been, at least in my lifetime, or at least that I can remember, since I've been paying attention this closely. Just really excited to kind of Sunday's going to roll, or, going to be done. And we're not going to have the big brackets, but we're going to have kind of the mini brackets. And we're going to see, okay, who's 1 through 4 in the SEC, who's 1 through 4 in the Big 12, because there's a big jumbled mess in a lot of these big conferences, Mountain West as well. And then I agree with you. I don't think Providence has enough in the tank, but I tell you what, if they could somehow get the job done, that would be massive. And then obviously Monday night, I can't wait for those matchups. I love Monday night, like sports, whether it's Monday Night Football or a national championship game, just because, when you work the 9 to 5, Monday nights are not a whole lot of fun. It's looking into 4 more days of early wake ups, but you get 2 games to kind of distract you from that. Although I have a feeling I don't know if I'll be able to stay up for the second one. They tend to start a little late for my delicate sensibilities, but we do have the time change this week as well, so keep an eye on that. Raider Jim, your final thoughts for this episode of In the Paint.
Oh, I'm telling you, I just think this is already exciting, just our talk right here. And talking about what's happened, where everybody's ending up. Just a little bit of a correction here. I happened to pull up an article that came up about the West Coast Conference tournament. Semifinals are Sunday.
Oh, that was my fault.
Semifinal, it shows semifinals on Sunday, and it
Huh.
shows this cannot be right. West Coast Conference Tournament Prediction 2024. First game's tomorrow, Pacific against Pepperdine. Friday, winner of that game plays USD, and then Loyola Marymount plays Portland. On Saturday, winner of that game plays
Hmm.
Santa Clara.
Oh, you're
Winner
right.
of the other game
Huh.
plays San Francisco, which is interesting because I could have sworn I saw something completely different.
Yeah, I'm gonna call out ESPN on this one. ESPN is where I go because I could just sort through top 25 and I can just hit a little button and it moves me to the next day. And yeah, because there were only 2 games on Sunday, and there are a few Big East games that I didn't really feel like putting in. So I'm gonna blame ESPN on that one. But yeah, they'll get a strongly worded
Yeah,
letter.
and this came out an hour ago.
Yeah, and that's because honestly, when I put it together, I remember thinking, man, I could have sworn the WCC tournaments were on Monday night, or the finals were on Monday nights. And it makes sense because the big conferences get rolling on Tuesday. So TV likes to kind of stick those in, and obviously ESPN is going to want Gonzaga or WCC finals. So good correction
Yeah, it
there.
shows 7 o'clock Monday for the
Perfect.
final.
Thank you. Good correction there. Once again, I'll take a little bit of the blame, but ESPN, you got most of it. But my final thoughts, I am going to switch sports here. 2 football thoughts. First and foremost, obviously, me being an Eagle fan, it is official. Jason Kelsey announced his retirement on Monday. I watched it, or I'm sorry, I listened to it at work just in case the boss is listening. Just listen to it. No video, I promise. But it was really tough to watch for good reasons. You could tell the emotion he put into it. You could tell the preparation he put into writing the speech as well. He tried to make sure he remembered. I'm pretty sure he even shouted out his band teacher. Really, really well done. Bit of a tearjerker, hilarious at times, sad at times. I mean, he brought up, one of the Eagles who passed away in training camp a few years ago. Incredible retirement speech. It was from the heart. And the one thing that I loved about it as well, it came out a few days after, but the Philadelphia Eagles trainer, he unfortunately this past year or last year was diagnosed with cancer and was going through chemo, and unfortunately wasn't able to tape Jason's ankles in Tampa for what would eventually be his final game. He wasn't able to travel. He had to do chemo back in Philadelphia. So Jason Kelsey had him tape his ankles for his retirement speech. That's just the type of stuff right there. You hear all the stories. You can go. I guarantee you. Just Google him. You'll hear all kinds of stories. Great football player, but a better man. And that's what I want him to be remembered as. Sad as I am to see him go, I'm really, really excited to see what's next for him, because I don't think he's going to be kind of a Barry Sanders where he goes into the shadows. We're going to be seeing plenty of Jason Kelsey and the whole Kelsey family. He has a beautiful family, Kylie and his 3 daughters. Just fantastic, fantastic stuff. And the second thing I do want to shout out, or at least, bring up a little bit on the somber side. Unfortunately, the football world lost Chris Mortensen. And, for me, Chris Mortensen, me growing up, Chris, he was Mort. If you saw anything back before Twitter, back before everybody was a source, this or that, Chris Mortensen was the source, if you will. And unfortunately did pass away at the age of 72 from everything we heard. It was unexpected. So once again, sending positive vibes, thoughts and prayers out to everyone who was affected with that. And, I saw something that said RAP to my childhood, and it was Stuart Scott. And of course, Chris Mortensen and some of the others that we grew up. I remember, every morning waking up watching Sports Center and seeing those guys. It's unfortunate, but thank you to the Mortensen family for sharing him with us, and thank you to Mort for all the news he brought us. It's unfortunate, but a hell of a life, hell of a career. We're all indebted to what he brought to the table. So
Amen.
with that being said, thank you all so much for listening to this episode of the In the Paint podcast. Excuse me, let's try this again. Thank you all so much for listening to the In the Paint podcast presented by the First Off the Bench podcast network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are first. It is time for you all to go wash your hands and stop hating everybody. We'll talk to you all very soon. Take care.
What was that?